Story 1. Dude wound up in a cult. After high school, dude moved into a tent in the city park, went jogging one day and got invited to a party at some place that turned out to be a cult. A big-ass compound in some rundown town with a bunch of alpacas running around. He moved into the compound, got into narcotics, and ended up fathering a bunch of kids. 5 years later, the dude left the cult, moved back into the tent, and went silent. Bam. Quit talking to everyone just like that. I see the dude around town sometimes, but he isn't the same. I'll catch him slinking through alleys, peering around corners, all paranoid. Dude's always wearing the same hoodie pulled all tight around his head. Even wears the thing in 90-degree heat in the dead of July. Whenever he sees me, his eyes bug out, and he takes off running. Wild stuff. Story 2. Dude was a top-tier athlete and top 25 student. I remember being hyper jealous of him. He had the soccer skills I wanted, dated the girl I liked, all of it. Then he started dealing in his junior year. He ended up dropping out 3 months from graduating and going to jail a few weeks later. Story 3. My friend at 14 drank, then stole his dad's car and made it about 3 houses over before he crashed it. DUI at 14 made his vehicle insurance $1,000 a month when he turned 16. He went off the rails after the DUI, too. Was an alcoholic at 15, did not graduate. Now he lives in Mexico and runs a successful business, wears suits to work, married a really amazing woman, and has a pile of half-ginger, half-Mexican children. Probably one of the happiest guys I know. Story 4. Jen dated Ryan, who's mixed, this is relevant, off and on for a year. They broke up. She still wanted him. Jen then dated Mike, Ryan's best friend. Ryan didn't care. They were both sleeping with her anyway. Nudes got around. They're all on the baseball team, so they make jokes. Baby 1 came out white. Rumor mill says she was really upset it was Mike's child and not Ryan's. Pattern continues. She leaves Mike for Danny, Ryan's other best friend. Still sleeping with Ryan and Danny. Rinse and repeat with baby number 2. Baby is white. They break up. We graduated. Jen dates Chris, Mike's older brother. Has 2 more kiddos with him. She's doing great, living a Midwest redneck life. But man, that drama was entertaining. Story 5. He ate a lot of mushrooms and had a complete mental breakdown. The trip never ended. He thought his girlfriend and mother were actors pretending to be them. He had to be institutionalized for something like a month. He's now a real estate agent. Story 6. A guy I went to school with in the late 80s was the poor kid and had a heap of behavioral and anger issues. If there was a fight, it probably involved him. I think throughout the first 6 years or so of school, pretty much every guy in the class had been in a fight with this guy at one point or another. Either someone had said or done something that upset him, or he had said or done something that upset them. In my case, he threw a lump of wood at a kid and missed. It hit me in the head instead, so I chased him down, pushed him over, and booted him in the head. I absolutely should have been suspended for this, but because it was him, I got in no trouble, and he was removed from class. Again. Somehow in high school, he got a girlfriend, who happened to be a friend of my sister's. My sister cut ties with her friend because of this, and that was basically the last I heard of him. Until a few years ago. I was back in my hometown for a few days, and my dad invited me to the golf clubhouse for a few beers after his round of golf. Once there, he introduced me to the guys he's been playing with, and said, "Apparently you two went to school together." Just then, I realized who it was. He ended up marrying that girl from high school, and they had a few kids. He was working as a manager at a nearby electrical appliance store, and generally, he was doing pretty well for himself. It turned out he and my dad played golf together fairly often over the years. It was good to see he'd done well for himself. Not at all what I would have expected when I knew him back in the day. Story 7. A friend was with her boyfriend during wintertime in a car. He died from carbon monoxide poisoning, and she survived. Impacted her through school. Upon graduation, she moved to California. She was on a motorcycle with her new boyfriend during a road accident. He died. She suffered severe body burns from the fire. Her face was disfigured as a result, requiring many years of facial surgery. Later years, we worked together. Her positive attitude was astounding, considering what she went through. Story 8. Mr. B was a basement dweller, the type that still lives with mom. Close to 50 years old and was into model trains, ran the model train club, and idolized the Civil War, ran the Civil War club too. Mr. B fell in love with a student. Mr. B slept with said student. Mr. B impregnated said student before her graduation. Mr. B married said student after graduation. Mr. B also lost his job. The student. Let's just say she wasn't 100% mentally there. She saw nothing wrong with any of this. Through her graduation year, she was a total laughingstock, and even more so after graduation when she married this guy. She had no friends, little family, and the whole town knew the whole situation, so she could not escape it. She ended up divorcing Mr. B a few years later and leaving town. Knowing Mr. B was the one that should have taken the brunt of everything, I hope she's doing better in life now. Story 9. Hi, I'm one of the ones who kind of ruined my stuff in high school. My great-grandfather, who was my only positive male figure, passed away, and I got my first job. I stopped attending school altogether and spent most of my time drinking or smoking and thinking I was cool to my lame friends still going to school and not making money. I spent the years going from job to job, always broke but never homeless. Dealt with extremely severe depression and anxiety issues, and tried to myself at 18 and 22. Had extremely severe gambling issues in that stretch, and lost tens of thousands of dollars between slots and scratchers, and drank like a fish from that age range. I got my GED at 20, but didn't do anything with it for a while because I turned 20 in 2020. So COVID put a wrench in my plans. I worked in the gun business with my dad and ran background checks and did some sales. Made a lot of money doing that, but wasted it all in casinos, nice hotels when going out of town for gun shows, and expensive bottles of liquor. I'm 24 now and hold a steady job at a grocery warehouse with a union, and I'm working on saving up money to move across the country to live with my girlfriend. I started actually using my Native American benefits and plan on attending college after I move and use the union I'm currently with to find a new job when I move states. I'm sober and haven't gambled in 2 years. Story 10. Our valedictorian got pregnant the summer before senior year, hid it as long as she could, married the boyfriend a few months before graduation, took a couple of AP tests while 9 months pregnant, and gave her valedictory speech with her month-old child in the stands. She'd been recruited by some top colleges, but went to a nearby state university because it offered her a full scholarship plus living expenses. She graduated in 3 years and built a life. She and the guy are still married and recently celebrated their 30th anniversary. It's me. I was that girl. Story 11. I was in varsity sports my sophomore year. Advanced with honors program. Good grades. Got married off to an adult who had been in a position of authority over me and became mom to the baby his ex-wife abused, tried to kill, then abandoned. Had to get a job. Moved into a condemned, wrecked house. Missed a tremendous number of school days because kiddo spent a lot of time in the hospital and dad's work was more necessary to our survival than my classes. Relationship was abusive. Husband lost his job. Power and water frequently cut off. I graduated after my teachers got together and petitioned to pass me, despite missing too many days because I'd kept my grades up and attended every makeup day. That freed up enough time that I could work 2 jobs while also being the housekeeper, cook, and parent. Husband spent most of what I made. Fast forward to today. Recently bought my dream home in my dream location. Happy, healthy relationship that's been going strong for over 2 decades. I ended up adopting a kiddo from that first marriage, and he's now happily married with 2 beautiful kids, a good job, and his own home. 2 bio kids, now 17 and 19, who are both really well set up and starting their own journeys into adulthood. Things are really good. Story 12. Dude got busted our senior year for LSD shrooms by the resource officer. Good dude, just a little short-sighted maybe. Years later, I was curiously looking at a train-hopping subreddit and saw the username of slang for someone from our town, along with a nearby area code. I was curious, so I looked at his account. Homeless, big heroin user, hops railcars. He made a post and mentioned his first name. It was my friend from high school. I messaged him, and he confirmed who he was, and then asked me not to tell anyone about his habits. I didn't tell anyone, but asked him to be good to himself. He deleted his Reddit account that same day. That was probably 10 years ago at least. I haven't heard from him since. Story 13. Got caught with like 70 prescription painkillers in a Ziploc bag right before spring break of senior year. Talked my way out of criminal stuff after getting kicked out of school. Dropped out and moved to Florida. Now I'm 32 and make great money with an awesome job. I have 3 kids, a nice house, and a loving wife. Don't let high school stuff dictate your adult life. Story 14. Guy's parents went out of town for a weekend. Friday night, he was convinced to have a party. It got huge, but he stayed sober to make sure the house wasn't wrecked. The night ended, and he was the talk of the town for about 12 hours. Saturday night rolls around, and he announces he's throwing another. About 2 to 3 times as many people show up, and he decides to join in the festivities. Without him making sure the house wasn't destroyed, the crowd went absolute ape on it. Anything of value was stolen from the house. Carpets were ripped up, windows were broken, windows were stolen, furniture was burnt, etc. Sometime during the night, he was convinced to take his dad's newish F-150 for a spin, and he ended up ramming it into the side of a grain silo on the property. Police eventually came, and he caught a couple charges, partially because the party the night before was shut down by the police. Fast forward to Sunday evening, and his parents came home, and he obviously had no real chance at cleaning up. No one knows for sure what happened, but because he was 18, his parents co-signed loans for him to pay for everything that was destroyed. He lost college scholarships because of his charges. It's been 9 years now, and he hasn't left the town. I don't know what he does for work anymore, but to this day, he only ever talks about the party he threw. Story 15. It was a girls-only Christian academy. You go down the road 2 miles and there's a public school. She got pregnant. Police were doing one of those midday locker checks with a canine. She has grass in her locker, where she was also apparently stashing her sonogram pictures and other medical records. Parents disowned her, and she lost her scholarship. Last I heard, she has 9 kids with 5 baby daddies. Our uniform was a blouse, vest, jacket, and skirt, in a cranberry red flannel pattern. It was easy to hide her pregnancy by blaming weight gain. Story 16. One of the girls in my close friend circle in high school was the valedictorian of our senior class. Super gifted sweet girl who was really driven and an amazing artist. Scored super high on her SAT and got full rides to several California schools. While at college, she got involved with some white supremacist dude. They got married, and she got caught in a stolen car and working in the meth trade. She came back to our small hometown and started working at the restaurant I was managing. She was covered in prison tattoos and AB markings. Great worker, and seemed like her old high school self, and appeared we had our friend back. I left the restaurant and became a cop and lost track of her for a few years. Ended up serving a high-risk warrant with the fire department SWAT team at what most people would describe as a trap house. And there was my friend, strung out and getting arrested. I tried to talk to her, and she didn't even recognize me. Super sad. She had a real promising life, and drugs ruined it. Story 17. She was in adult videos at 18, while she was still a senior in high school, 1997. So, not internet videos, actual DVDs. We were from a medium-sized town, not a big city at all, so I still can't even imagine how this happened in the AOL days. Her mom found out and went to all the local stores and bought all the copies because she was on the cover, hoping to keep people from finding out. Well, this made all the cops believe this was a very popular DVD, and they restocked double. This went on for a solid year with her buying out all the videos and them restocking. Everyone knew. And on one occasion, a kid at school saw her mom buying a stack of a dozen DVDs, which made the local lore pop off. She is now 45-ish and has 4 kids, and is married to a veterinarian. She seems really happy, but it's hard to think of her without thinking about her being a barely legal slut. Story 18. My ex. We dated for about a year, before he got caught breaking into our high school at night with an older friend. They stole a laptop, sprayed a fire extinguisher, tripped a silent alarm, and got caught with unrelated bolt cutters they stole from somewhere else. I stupidly stayed by him through this, but we broke up for different reasons a few months later. His dad hired a good lawyer, and by my senior year of college, it seemed like it was all a distant memory. Until he was busted as part of a giant narcotics trafficking ring across multiple college campuses. He's got felony charges now, and the only job he could get was at a truck rental agency. He was set to be a high achiever with his academics and familial connections, but just lacked common sense. Story 19. I would consider that person me. I was an all-state athlete. Other schools in the district would beg for my family to move so I could play for their team. By my sophomore year, I already had colleges knocking on my door. Until I got involved with the wrong friends who wanted to do nothing but drink alcohol and do narcotics. And they had me convinced that sports and school were lame. I'd skipped 90% of my classes and practices. When I did show up, I was wrecked of cigarettes, alcohol, and pot. I couldn't do sports because I didn't have the grades to show for it. I had one teacher tell me I'd end up in jail after graduation. 4 years later, I moved to a different state. I'm back in college and have a 3.75 GPA. Never been to jail, just struggled with alcohol up until last year. Getting married soon as well. I'm happy. I actually had a teacher from my high school reach out and let me know they always knew I'd be great. I just needed to apply myself and get away from the toxic people around me. Story 20. In 4th grade, a girl moved to town and was placed in my class. She was nice, made friends with everyone, and was really smart. She eventually got placed in those special classes. GATE, I think? She became that perfect kid. Teachers loved her. Kids loved her. The ideal student type. Our moms became friends. And after school, she'd occasionally take me to her house, so she could talk to her mom, and me and the girl could play together or whatever. She'd occasionally have her mom pick me up with her daughter when both my parents were working, and I'd hang out at her house for a while. Cut to middle school, and I basically lose contact with her. She still goes to school. I'd see her in the halls, but I didn't have any classes with her in any grade. The closest interaction I had with her was one day in 8th grade. My teacher had me and a couple of other kids run down to a class to pick up some supplies. It was one of those classes at the end of the school for the, let's say delinquent kids who needed extra help. We open the door. All the kids quiet down and stare as they do whenever someone opens the door during class. And she was there. All I hear is, "Oh hey, I know him." And I smile and wave. Then that's pretty much the last I saw of her. After middle school, I went to high school in the town and basically reset my social life. Yeah, that was fun. But still kept in contact with a few friends. Anyway, maybe around sophomore year, my mom starts asking me if I still talk to the girl. Turns out she had run away from home and had been gone a few days. Of course, I didn't know anything, but they still managed to find her at the local park a couple of days later. Turns out she got involved with a local gang. I later came to find out from those friends I kept in contact with that it was in middle school that she started hanging out with that gang. All older people, and they apparently had all taken turns having their way with her. From what I've heard, she enjoyed the new rebellious lifestyle after years of being the perfect child. These days, I don't really know what she's up to, but I really hope she was able to get a better life. She really was a great person. Story 21. Not me, but an old regular at a shop I worked at, and I overheard this from someone who was a classmate of the guy. He was an extremely well-spoken and intelligent kid in high school. Got into a car accident and his head got hit really bad. Personality changed 180. When I met him in his 20s, he reverted into a childlike personality and was ultra fixated on things like Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, and the likes. Which is how he became a regular. He was like a huge kid. Tended to be a lot more self-centered and knew less about the boundaries of people. Fortunately enough, it seems his family runs their own business and could take care of him. Last I heard, he's set to take care of some farmland and the business they have. He seems happy with it, so I'm glad that he has a huge support system. Story 1. Freshman year of high school. Very popular guy who was the it kid freshman phenom wide receiver on a nationally ranked team. We were all leaving class one day. He randomly decided it was a good idea to make fun of a very well-loved handicapped guy who was dying of his condition, some advanced form of water on the brain if I remember correctly, and even decided to punch him. This knocked the poor kid to the ground. About 10 guys immediately jumped him. A shop teacher saw it, the wide receiver getting his, happen and let it continue for a minute before stopping things. Mr. Popular got quite messed up in that short window. Kicked off team, expelled, moved schools in a move that I'm guessing was a way to start over at a new school. Never heard from him again. Went from pep rally king to degenerate outcast in 5 minutes. I had a front row seat and was one of 50 plus who testified to the school admins. The victim passed away later that school year from his condition. You almost never heard him speak, but when he did, he was always kind and thoughtful. Humans are so weird. In a good way, I mean. Think about how everyone knows his situation. No one would bring it up, but everyone knew, and there is a sort of silent social pact to treat him really well. That social ability to understand that communally is so strong that all those kids jumped in without a word of warning. How crazy is that? Story 2. When I was in 6th grade, one of my classmates brought $90-ish to school. They were going to go shopping after school. She was the most popular girl in class. At some point during the course of the day, the money went missing. Our teacher went right to the superintendent's office right across the hall from our class. This was a super small school where there were only 212 kids total from kindergarten to 12th grade. Within minutes, they had pulled all of us out of class and separated out the boys and the girls. The 5th grade teacher took the girls into the bathroom 3 at a time and strip searched them, and the superintendent handled all of us boys. I didn't take the money, but I got in a stall, locked it, and refused to come out. I had some serious skid marks going on that day, and no one on this earth needed to go rooting around in my underpants. He finally gave up and let me go. The cops showed up a few minutes later and interviewed all of us one by one. A few weeks later, it got out that she forgot to bring the money to school, and it was home in her bedroom the whole time. Despite us being in a rural area and the next nearest school being 30 miles away, the backlash was bad enough that her parents pulled her out of school and sent her to the next town over. In retrospect, people fuck up, and our anger at her was misplaced compared to the mountain of lawsuits that should have come down on the superintendent. Isn't strip searching kids considered SA? That can't be legal. Story 3. Popular girl was driving drunk on the way to school and caused a pretty bad accident involving 3 other cars. She spilled liquor on herself and slammed on her brakes in a line of cars. Her car managed not to have a scratch. She swapped seats with her passenger in front of everyone before cops arrive. A few minutes later, we realized she has disappeared. She had slipped into another car that had stopped to see if everyone was okay. Several people ended up getting tickets, and her passenger ended up getting a DUI. She was unpopular until graduation. Story 4. This one popular girl in high school got so drunk at a party that she just started shitting herself everywhere. Some friends drove her home, and she did it again in the back seat. Not easily forgotten. But it was one of those things no one would say anything about. It's just that the entire school knew by Monday afternoon. Story 5. He whipped his dick out during class and put it on the shoulder of the girl who was sitting in the desk in front of him. He got kicked out immediately, and I believe charges pressed for SA. We were a couple of weeks from graduating too. Story 6. A guy was bragging for like a solid week about how he slept with like 3 girls at the school. Turns out 2 of them got pregnant. That was really bad luck, but that wasn't what made him unpopular. What made him unpopular was that one of the pregnant girls was known as the innocent religious girl and genuinely wanted to wait until marriage before having sex. Her friends started questioning why she'd changed her standards so suddenly. Turns out she was SA'd. Story 7. I went to the same school as the kids of the Prime Minister of my country at the time. I didn't know the daughter too well, but apparently she went from being popular to being pulled out of the school when her dad lost the election. It was pretty sad that people started hating her for something she had no control over. Story 8. He was a new kid, but due to his looks, parents' wealth, and sports aptitude, he quickly became popular. Then he made the mistake of bullying a harmless kid who was on the spectrum and was basically the football team's lucky charm. They did not take kindly to that, and he went from being the next big thing to being that kid no one wanted to talk to, and he had to basically bribe people to keep them around. That football team sounds like they're amazing people. Seeing people band together and stick up for the person who may or may not be able to do so for themselves always makes me happy. I also just like seeing rich people being put in their place according to personality. Story 9. Guy wasn't exactly extremely popular to begin with, but was well known. He punched some girl at my school in the face for no reason at a concert. Shortly after this, there was news that he rolled his brand new Camaro going 95 in a 45. This caused him and another guy at our school a lot of injuries. His friend lost his entire ear in the accident. Oh, and this was right after they stole beer from Kroger. They were drunk driving. Anyways, people kept their distance after this. Another kid that comes to mind was someone very popular in our grade. One of my friends went over to his house and used his computer without his permission. My friend ended up finding terabytes of child porn on his PC. From what I heard, the FBI even got involved. He never was seen at school again after that. I hope I'm never put in a situation where I find someone's CP. That sounds like such a situation. Story 10. I was a popular girl, developed full-blown schizophrenia my sophomore year of high school, and had a spiral that rivaled a Hollywood movie. By the time I graduated, everyone knew me as the weird, crazy witch girl who talked to herself and had no friends. Now I'm out of high school, stable, on my meds, with people in my life who love me, and I haven't thought about popularity since. Life is wild. Story 11. I was somewhat part of that crowd, and God, was there a lot of drama. One of the girls got shunned by practically our whole grade after it was revealed that she slept with the boyfriend of this other really well-liked girl. They were the it couple. She got lots of judgment about it, though somehow the guy got away with it without much issue. I almost felt bad for her, but then I didn't. Because the year before, she made the Spanish teacher cry by being so rude, and later in the year, she was caught cheating in bio and pressuring this really smart girl to give her the answers. She wasn't exactly a good person. Story 12. He was in my grade. We were seniors, and it was the last few days of school. Him and some of his buddies, who were also popular but not nearly as much, decided to vandalize the school. At night, they spray-painted and stuff all over the outside of the place. They also sprayed the words, "could have done worse," on the big entryway doors in the front. Well, they got caught. Their punishment? None of them graduated. They all had to repeat the year. Everyone thought they were idiots after that. According to one of my friends who was a grade younger, many people would say, "could have done better" to them in passing. Story 13. As soon as school ended, everyone stopped pretending to like her. If you're wondering why, well, in my case, it was a mixture of reasons. Firstly, because she was pretty and cool and had a lot of guy friends. We all went to an all-girls school. Then, as we got older, it was because her parents were both teachers in the school and we didn't want to be treated badly by staff. I experienced this when I fought with her, for example. And finally, because it was our final year. Where I'm from, that is when we had our most important exams, and everyone just didn't give a shit anymore. It was easier to just nod along and ignore her bullshit than to have drama going on while trying to focus on schoolwork. I don't think she even noticed how much the ride had turned until she left school and realized no one wanted to hang out with her. Story 14. Nothing that dramatic, but they graduated high school. Then they became a literal nobody. There was this kid named Matt who spent all of grades 1 through 12 riding his older brother's fame. His older bro was very charismatic and proactive, big into sports, the student council president, valedictorian, highest grades, you name it. Matt just walked in as the little bro and got all the attention and popularity from teachers and students because of who his brother was. It hit him hard when he went to the local university and realized that nobody knew him or paid him any attention. In June, he graduated high school as the valedictorian and had a massive amount of awards and scholarships. By the end of September, only 3 weeks into university, I saw him in a biology class. Your typical first-year general bio class that every program seemed to need. He was one of 500 students in a massive auditorium sitting in the back. I noticed him because he was there with a friend, randomly shouting out comments and funny one-liners to try and mock the professor. The kind of shit that might have had people giggle and comment about, "You're so cool, you're so funny," in grade school. Well, that didn't fly here. Instead of attention, all he got were nasty glares and being ignored by everyone. His entire world crumbled. He went through literal withdrawal from the lack of attention and popularity. Less than 6 weeks into university, he dropped out. My friends and I ran into him at a bowling alley a few years later. He was unrecognizable. From being thin and athletic, he looked like he put on 50 pounds and had a massive beer gut, scruffy beard, and married with 2 kids, each with different mothers. He had the whole world in the palm of his hand, and then reality smacked the life out of him. Story 15. Admittedly, this popular person didn't lose their popularity, but I will contend that it is the dumbest thing a popular person has ever done. During high school, we all had to read a book about the Holocaust. I don't remember the exact book, but it was an incredible story. obviously in a horrible yet eye-opening way. After every English class finished reading it, we had a school-wide assembly where an Auschwitz survivor came and spoke about their experiences. It was an incredibly heavy assembly, and it was clearly respected. There wasn't any goofing around like normal assemblies. Everyone, including the class clowns, settled down to give this person respect. After their presentation, they opened the floor to general questions. Most people asked pretty tame questions, but this particular popular person raised their hand and asked, "Did you ever have a one-on-one encounter with Hitler?" The presenter was dumbfounded, and the entire school went silent like a collective, "What the fuck did you just ask?" I'm curious about what the presenter answered. Honestly, a part of me wants to know the same thing, but at the same time, it would be kinda disrespectful to ask that to the presenter. Story 16. There was a new kid at our school that I'll call Alex for the purposes of this story. He was athletic, funny, good-looking, etc. He got in with the popular kids pretty quick and got along with just about everybody. Small-town school. There was a special needs kid in our grade that I'll call Josh. Everybody loved Josh like a little brother, and we were all very protective of him. One day, about a week after Alex got to the school, he was teasing Josh out in the courtyard, and Josh was getting really upset. A few kids told him to cut it out, and Alex got angry, so he pushed Josh. He instantly was attacked by several of the nearby guys and was getting the snot beaten out of him until the teachers got there. Alex was suspended for 2 weeks, and the guys attacking him were suspended for 1 week. When he got back, he was basically shunned. Nobody would talk to him unless it was school-related. During gym class, people would do whatever they could to exclude him. He switched schools after a few weeks of this. Looking back at it, his treatment was really harsh, but he fucking deserved it in my eyes. Story 17. This is actually kind of sad, but the guy I knew was declared Athlete of the Century at our school. He was amazing at football, track, rugby, and wrestling. Didn't play hockey though, which was big where I am. But everyone loved this guy because he almost single-handedly won us provincial championships. I hate to bring this into it, but he was also one of 2 black kids at our school, so he had to really break through some prejudices by some of the people there, as it's a small rural community. But then he suffered a gruesome leg injury that ended his career. So, when he stopped playing sports, people sort of forgot about him. This was 12 years ago, and I actually saw him a few months back. He's doing well. I'm 2 years younger, and he was always nice to me. To make it even sadder, last year his brother, another great athlete, took his own life. He didn't go to our school though, and I didn't know him. Story 18. She was a bit of a bitch. Pretty as a picture, but dim as a dark room. Once people saw how she really was as a person, i.e. using her looks to get what she wanted and throwing a hissy fit once she didn't get it, caused people to lose interest real quick. I actually met her about a decade after we graduated, and she was a completely different person. Really humble and gentle. Actually a lot more clever than she appeared. No idea what she's doing now. Story 19. He had already lost a lot of popularity from going to state-mandated rehab once. Though the last straw was when he crashed and killed a girl before he made it out of his driveway, only a couple months after he got out of mandatory rehab while driving drunk. Used to be friends with the guy, but he had a downward spiral and last I heard is still in jail. Don't drink and drive, people. It's not just your life on the line when you make that decision. Story 20. 2 most popular people at my high school were dating. One day, their friend posted a Snapchat story. They walked in on them and recorded the girl pegging the guy. I guess people just couldn't look at them the same. Story 21. Here's my story. In 5th grade, we moved and I changed schools. I went from a school in the city where everyone got along and was friends to a school in the suburbs where I was introduced to popular and unpopular for the first time. As a fat, quiet kid, I was quickly deemed unpopular and took my fair share of abuse. Around March or April, my teacher moved our desks around and set up islands of 4 to 5 desks around the room, except for 2. The most popular boy in school was a troublemaker in class, and me, who moved our desks right up next to hers. I later found out she did this for 2 reasons. 1, to keep an eye on him, and 2, she felt I'd be a good influence on him. A funny thing happened. Between then and the end of school, we became best friends. and I became the second most popular kid in school. I started getting invited to birthday parties. Kids stopped being crappy to me. I got invited to play football at lunch. Girls liked me. It was amazing. Then summer happened. We were in different classes the next year. He forgot about me, then he moved, and everyone went back to treating me like shit. That's my little story about losing popularity. Story 22. This person had been a compulsive liar to the point where nobody believed a single thing she said. Let's make a list real quick. After her boyfriend had told his friends that he had sex with her, she spread the rumor that she was pregnant and started wearing really baggy clothes. She said she drove to the Super Bowl, which at the time was in Texas, and made it back the next morning for school. We live in Michigan. Said she kissed Tom Brady at said Super Bowl. Started drama and rumors with every person in the school. Story 23. A tall, good-looking foreign exchange student showed up one year with a killer smile and some impressive soccer skills. Never thought I'd see girls giggle and follow around boys in a crowd like they do in TV shows, but this guy made it happen. He abruptly stopped showing up one day after a few months. Don't know 100% what happened, but the rumor was that he got sent back for putting some pretty serious racist symbols in a poetry art project thinking it would be a funny joke. Story 24. He was popular among the group of people he was associated with. I don't think he was super popular or anything. Punk grunge kid. All his popularity went out the window when he went out the window of his car after he crashed it into a building because he was huffing paint and speeding down the road with one of the group's popular girls. Thankfully, she survived, but from what I recall, he wasn't remembered so fondly after that. Story 25. In high school, she was good at singing, so people became jealous of her. They'd say, "Sing for us, Christina." And if she sang, they'd say, "Look at her showing off, singing in the school hallways." And if she didn't sing, they'd say, "Look at her stuck up. She thinks she's too good to sing for us." So eventually, I think she got tutored her senior year and beyond. Oh, her last name was Aguilera. Story 26. Member of the National Honor Society got caught cheating on a final exam senior year. Their father bribed the principal by donating a car to be used for school activities so that they would graduate. Graduation day. Every other member of the National Honor Society took off their rope before crossing the stage to accept their diploma. Story 27. He made varsity freshman year, hung out with all the older kids, and didn't give two about his friends our own age. 2 years later, they all graduated. Even his close friends saw through him trying to get back being the popular kid. I should go ahead and mention, by the time we were seniors, he chilled out. Stopped being so full of himself and was a great student and athlete. We ended up getting along in the end. Not exactly close, but that's because we played opposite sports. Every hockey player played soccer too. He and his good friends played basketball and football. It was a weird dynamic. During the football season, no one gave a shit about soccer, and every hockey season, no one cared about basketball. Story 28. Girl in my class responded to his bullying with, "Oh yeah? Well, at least I don't have a bald spot." Poor science teacher.